Great stuff. Okay, well, what we'll do now is hand over for our final presentation of the day to Luke Day from Point Solutions. He's going to tell us a little bit about how charities can benefit from Office 365. So if you'd like to share your screen, Luke, and take us through that, that will be great.
Okay, perfect, thank you, and hi everybody. So hopefully you can see one of my screens. Hopefully I've got the right screen. Hold on a second. Technology is great when it works. Okay, hopefully you can see my presentation. If not, please shout up. If not, it's going to be a boring 15 minutes for a few people. So my name's Luke, and I am the Principal Office 365 consultant here at Point Solutions Software. I've got my colleague around and about as well. In the session, Isaac. He's one of our Microsoft 365 specialists, and he's around as well to touch base with anybody who might have any questions or anything that we can potentially help with after the back of this call. I've got quite a few things to go through, so I'm going to go through things as quickly as I can, and hopefully, that will generate some questions. The slides will be circulated. My contact details and Isaac's are on the first and the last slide, so feel free to reach out to us. What I'm going to do quickly is just cover who we are. I'm not going to linger on that one too much, and then I'm going to cover a little bit about what Office 365 is. So some people may have come across this, some people may not have, and then get on to the benefits for charities that Microsoft provide as well. And then what I was wanting to do as well is just add a bit of context to this, because I'm going to mention a lot of things very quickly, and there's a couple of things that have really stood out for us, especially with seeing the way that organizations, not just charities but all organizations, have migrated to working in the sort of light of what's been happening over the last 5 or 6 months. So hopefully try and just add some insights, and I've got a demo as well, so hopefully the demo gods are really kind to me, and it won't my internet won't screw it up or anything like that. But let's see how we get on. So Point Solutions, for people that may have not heard about us, we are Microsoft specialists. We've been Microsoft specialists for the best part of 20 years now, and we've been an accredited silver partner for about 7 or 8 of those years. We've got over 15 years experience in Microsoft SharePoint, so some people may have come across this technology, some people may not, and we've also got over 6 years experience in Office 365. 6 years experience might not seem quite as much as the SharePoint, but Office 365 has only been around for 6 years, so we can't push that one anymore, unfortunately. We provide quite a few different services. We can be a license provider. We can help with licensing around your Office 365, your Microsoft environments. And obviously, I'm going to talk a little bit later on about the licenses for charities, which is the big win for from Microsoft. We can provide consultancy services and knowledge transfer services, so we can help organizations get to grips with Office 365. There's a lot of things in Office 365 and its applications that sit under it that are aimed at what Microsoft term a power user now. So you don't need somebody who sits in a darkened room with a baseball cap on, writing ones and zeros on the screen all the time. There's a lot of things that don't require developers for using these services. So we can help provide those the knowledge for that, and we can also help advise which of the applications, because there is quite a lot that come under this Office 365 umbrella, are best used within the organization as well. As well as being an Office 365 specialist and Microsoft SharePoint specialist, we also provide Office 365 based apps. So we have some people apps as well, mainly centering around learning management systems. So again, ensuring that you've got compliance and credibility within the organization, all that runs within this infrastructure. And we can also help with something called the Power Platform that I'm going to talk about a little bit later on, but it's a really great way of quickly and easily getting organizations up and running. And Rich talked about a fantastic scheme about the donation of PCs. And then if you combine with that, this will allow people to use the machines that they've potentially already got within charities, and also allow them to use their mobile phones as well. And it's becoming a fairly accepted, and I'll say this very tentatively because I think it is, it's only an opinion, a fairly accepted scenario that people will use their mobile phones and their tablets, even though they are personal mobile phones, and we have to make sure there's security around that, to use them for work as well. It's becoming more of a normal sort of everyday occurrence. A couple of our customers there as well, I've focused, just because we're in a charity sector at the moment, I just focused on some of the charities that we work with. There are a few others there as well that we work with on top of those, but we're quite proud to work with charities, and we're also quite keen to provide as much value as possible to all of our customers, but we do try and go that extra mile for charities, especially from a costing point of view, to make sure that the return on investments are as quick as possible, because we appreciate the great work that all charities do across all of the sectors. So the first thing I'll do is, because I've mentioned this Office 365 and people have seen it in the title, but not everybody might have heard of Office 365, and that's absolutely fine. So what I'd like to do is just give a bit of a whistle-stop tour about what Office 365 is. So apologies for the people that may already know this, but essentially Office 365 is Microsoft's cloud applications and services. It's licensed on a subscription model, so it's basically a per user per month model. So previously you might buy a copy of Microsoft Office, and it might cost you X number of pounds for the technology, and then in 3 years they'll bring a new version out, and then you have to buy that if you want to upgrade, or you stay on the older version. What happens with Office 365 is it's subscription now, so you have less outlay up front, but you have a monthly bill, although we'll come to some of that in a minute. And basically off the back of that, you get all of the updates, so you never have to buy another piece of software again in that arena. What Office 365 does is it doesn't just encompass the Microsoft Office platform. So you can see, hopefully from this graphic here, there'll be some areas that you recognize, such as Word, Outlook, PowerPoint, Excel, but we've also got lots of other applications as well that some people may have heard of and may not have heard of. So things like Microsoft OneNote, that's it's like an online, a digital notebook. That's a fantastic piece of application. We've got something called Microsoft SharePoint, which is this one down here, that goes in line with something called Microsoft OneDrive. So it's a great way of centralizing the storage of your files, keeping them secure in the cloud, but being able to share them with many other people securely, and limiting who can access to the files. We've got another one here. This is something called Microsoft Planner. So it takes the tasks that people might be used to using in Microsoft Outlook to a whole new level in terms of how it can break tasks out. You can pass tasks between people and single them out in terms of meetings that you might be running, but also all of the tasks that you've got across many meetings and various other parts of the organization all get aggregated together to give you one massive list or one main list of what you have to achieve. A few others that are worth noting as well in Office 365. We have something called Microsoft Teams. So Microsoft Teams is Microsoft's version of what we're on now on Zoom, and it integrates into all of these different applications that we've got listed here, and many, many more. I'll not go through too many more, but I'll talk about the Power Platform a little bit later on, mainly something called Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI. So basically Power Apps is where we can build quick and simple and easy to use mobile applications that we can just push out very quickly, that everybody can use on their phone, tablet, or on their desktop. And I've got a bit of a demo of one of those. It will be on my desktop, but just give you an idea as to what these can look like and what Microsoft provide out of the box. Power Automate is a little bit what it says on the tin, in the fact that it will take the information that we've gathered, maybe from a Power App that somebody's entered information in and submitted, or from various other places as well, and it will do something with that information. So it will process that information. It might read it. It might make decisions on it. It might send the information for approval. All the things that you might do maybe on a piece of paper and then take to your line manager. We start to bring those processes into the automated world and bring a lot of efficiencies. And if there's one thing that I sort of see when I speak to the charities that we work with, is that time is very much of the essence. You know, a lot of charities do rely on volunteers. Time is really precious. So anything that can save time time is a huge help. So basically, in a nutshell, Office 365 gives us digitalization for the modern workplace. So it helps us use technology to make the workplace much more efficient and a little bit more modern. It gives us flexible and mobile working. So I mentioned that we can, we've got access to this on mobile phones, on tablets, and the way that this is designed, you don't have to have that PC with you all the time. If you've got access to a shared device, a shared laptop, a shared computer, people can log in with their own details and work in their own space. It is what we call enterprise grade technology, but it's for all business sizes. So regardless of whether you are a sole trader, a one-man operation, or whether you've got 10, 20, 30,000 staff, it's the same technology that gets utilized. And this is a really big plus for a lot of organizations, because what it does is it breaks down those walls of having to have expensive IT infrastructure to run some of these more powerful applications, because they're all wrapped under one subscription, which, as you'll see in a second, doesn't have to cost a lot, doesn't have to cost anything potentially for charities. So it allows the technology to come to a lot more people. I mentioned earlier that it's always up to date, so we continually get updates. So there's no more, I've got this version, I've got that version of the Office applications, etc. Everything gets kept up to date. And finally, it is scalable. So if you're a growing organization, if you've got 5, 10, 20 staff today, and this time next year you've got 50, 30, 50, 80, 100, 1,000 staff, however you grow, the technology will grow with you without any real pains or without any big investments to make that technology grow. Because what happens is, as you add the licenses, Microsoft take care of the rest. So a very, very quick whistle stop tour, and I could talk about what Office 365 has underneath its bonnet all day. So so I won't go through all that. There's quite a lot, hopefully, that you can decipher from there. But what are the key benefits from charities? That's the real sort of thing we're here to focus on today. So Microsoft provide several benefits. I've kind of broken them down into a couple of different snapshots here, just to try and keep it fairly brief. But they have their 100% donation licenses, first of all. So what a 100% donation license basically means is they will give you either a Microsoft 365 Business Basic license for free, or they will give you a Microsoft Office 365 Enterprise E1 license for free. Now, what that means, just to translate those from words into something that might be relatable, is the Business Basic and the Office 365 Enterprise E1 license encompass a lot of the applications I've just talked about. So they talk about Outlook, that we have the access to Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. They are the online versions only. Now, that might be a little bit restrictive in some respects, but it's also much better, obviously, because you can log in through a browser wherever you are, as long as you work for a charity and you are an employee of a charity, and you have the ability to work on your Word documents, your Excel documents, access your emails. You get an email with all of this as well. So again, some charities that we've worked with for the first time have been able to provide email to all of their staff, because that is encompassed under these licenses as well. Another key one is that we get Microsoft Teams, and we also get Microsoft OneDrive, which means that people can store files in the cloud securely, and they can follow them around wherever they are, and they've got the ability to collaborate in Microsoft Teams. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about Microsoft Teams in a short while. So there's quite a few things that we get from those different types of licenses. The key difference between the licenses effectively is that on the Business Basic licenses, we can only have up to 300 users. So you can have up to 300 people in the organization. After that, you have to go into what we call the enterprise licensing. It means no real difference. There's a few differences in the background, but nothing we need to get into today. And that has unlimited users available. So what this means is, for the first time, regardless of the size of organization for some charities, it means that everybody can have access to those core tools to help them do their job, collaborate on information, and share information as well. Now, by 100% donation licenses, what I mean by that is, as long as you qualify, and the qualification generally in the UK from Microsoft is that you are a registered charity, and they will ask you for your registered charity number, and that's, it's a relatively straightforward process to sign up for, and you get those licenses for free for your users to use. So there's absolutely no cost whatsoever. Sometimes we need to go a little bit further. Sometimes people will need these applications on their machine, for example, or they might need to use, you know, just a little one or two extra features that we don't quite get in the online versions of Office. And what we get is we get a donation from Microsoft on those licenses for charities as well. And I've put there it's a 70 to 80% donation because it does vary. Depending on the level of license that we go to. But to give you an example, the one of the packages I mentioned there, which is the Microsoft Office 365 Enterprise E3, is around £17 per user per month, generally, to an organisation, and charities receive that for somewhere in the region of about £3 per user per month. So when that kind of technology, or when we need to go to those level of licenses, which we might need to do for certain people in the organization, it's heavily subsidized, so it's much more cost effective. But like I say, we see a lot of charities that use the 100% donation licenses and get so much benefit out of it that they've not had before. Another element that Microsoft provide us with is what we call some Azure credit. Now, I'm not really going to talk about Microsoft Azure in too much detail, but anybody who's on the call who works closely with maybe their IT provider might be aware of a service called Microsoft Azure. Microsoft Azure is what we call infrastructure as a service. So it's not about running Office applications like Word, Excel, PowerPoint. This is maybe having a server in the cloud, or having some computing resource that you don't buy a physical computer for the Office. Then what happens is you use these resources from Microsoft to run your IT. And Microsoft will give $3,500 credit, which is around just over £3,000 a year, towards their subscription services. So if you've got small servers that are maybe getting to the point where they might be ready for being replaced, there is an alternative to run that where you don't have to then go and buy those servers, and you'd be surprised what you can run for that amount of money every year as well. You get quite a lot for that, and again, we see a lot of charities that take that up, but I'm not going to dive into that too much because I think that's probably a little bit too far for the call that we're on at the moment. So there's a couple of areas that I'd like to highlight, and again, these are kind of been highlighted for a short while, and they've really been sort of emphasised by the current situation that we're in, the coronavirus situation that we're in, and you know, the fact that we're having to do things that are more socially distant. People are not making it into the office as much, and you know, there's a couple of apps that have really started to shine. So the first one area I'd like to talk about is an area called Microsoft Teams. So what Microsoft Teams provides is a centralized workspace for organizations to work within, and what I mean is that we can talk, you know, you can have one-to-one chat, you can have group chat, we can share documents, and what's really cool about Teams is we can also co-author documents. So if a document is stored in there, we don't have to wait for one person to finish editing it until the next person can start editing it. You can actually have up to, depending on the license level you're on, you can actually have up to 32 people working on one document at the same time, and that's really quite powerful. It's a little bit strange the first time you see it. It looks a bit weird, and you can see people sort of like highlighting cells that they're working in Excel, or where their cursor is in Word, and then suddenly some words appear. But it's a really powerful tool for saving time, and it stops a lot of data issues as well of transferring emails, sending documents around via emails. We can run full meetings from Microsoft Teams, very similar to like what we're doing here on Zoom, and we can also do a few other things. So we can access some of the other applications from Office 365, like Microsoft Forms, Microsoft Power Apps, I'm going to talk about in a second, and also reports. We can bring them all into one centralized place, so we don't have to leave this workspace to get access to all the information we need. Really powerful for meetings, and they're just some of the headlines, you know, that I sort of thought I'd pick out, because we've seen them been really useful for helping people work remotely and work more efficiently, and saving that time where time is money. So the last area that I want to talk about is the Microsoft Power Platform, and I think I've probably got a couple of minutes. I'm hoping I have, so I'd really like to show this.
Is that got just 1 minute, Luke? If that's
1 minute, that's fine. Okay. Well, basically, the Microsoft Power Platform allows us to build, I mentioned earlier, these mobile apps, and rather than going through and sort of highlighting some of the benefits them. And what I'd like to do is show you one of the catalog apps from Microsoft. So when we go into Microsoft Power Apps, which is just powerapps.microsoft.com, if you've got a license, they give us the Canvas apps that we can start with. And particularly, I've got what we call the onboarding app here, because I thought that was quite useful, maybe if it's for onboarding volunteers or onboarding employees, but it also might be used in a similar kind of scenario where if you're running an event or you've got a session that you're starting, and we can see here that we can pull lots of information together centrally, and this can be run. I'm running it in my browser at the moment. We can run that on a desktop, sorry, on a tablet or on a mobile phone. And I'll not spend too much time, but we can see we can bring tasks together. So this is on the idea of onboarding, so things that people need to do. We can go in and see and mark tasks as complete if we wish, and we can see progress updates. We can see we could provide resources that people might need during the time that they're starting with the organization. We can allow them to provide some feedback, and all of this is constantly updating other information outside of here that the user doesn't have to worry about, but the organization can report on. And we can also pull on organizational reporting, so I can see who my team is and my colleagues, who they are, and some contact details. And we could also, just in this example, we'll pull some contacts in and some information about the wider company. And this is something that people can access across all of their, securely across all of their devices. It will know who they are from who's logged in, and it will allow them to work on this whenever, wherever they need to, and refer back to that at any one time. So really quick overview of what these Power Apps are like, and that is supported across all mobile phones, whether it's Apple or Android phones, as well as desktops and tablets as well. And you build one app can be built, and it can be pushed out straight across all of those devices nice and quickly. So just really something that was really worth highlighting, I think, in terms of what these apps can do, and they can be expanded quite drastically as well. So we can start to introduce things like artificial intelligence to help with decisions and information that we capture in and processing sort of images into text and various other things. But there's a lot of things to go through, but hopefully that just gives you a bit of an idea as to what we can achieve, and hopefully I'm relatively on time.
Well, sort of, but I'll let you off.
Sorry.
No, that's great. Thank you, Luke. I think it's nice to have some enthusiasm around a topic which, is always a bit challenging with IT. So if you want to stop sharing your screen, I can then see everybody up again. That's great.
There you go.
So thank you so much to all our speakers today. It's been really fantastic. We have tried something different today in terms of the sort of networking. In terms of the next Charity Hub, we've got the date down as the 19th of January. It will be online again, just due to current circumstances. Julia, before we go, have we got any questions that anybody's posed to any of our speakers that we've not yet answered?
There's a couple for Luke, just regarding the 365 presentation. Somebody's asked about Microsoft Freemium, which is a free version of Teams, and the limitations of Freemium in comparison to the support that they would get through the 365 charity.
There's various numbers of versions of Teams, and what Microsoft have also done throughout this pandemic, very cleverly, I guess, especially because they know they're going to be up against people like Zoom and Slack and Google Hangouts now, is they've actually provided 6-month free trials for a lot of people. What I would say is a lot of the free versions that you get without the subscriptions are going to be very limited. You'll generally be limited to your file sharing capabilities, potentially even your video calling capabilities. But as a charity, if you guys are a registered charity, as long as you've got that charity number, the best thing to do is to become part of the non-profit organization, so the non-profit scheme from Microsoft. We can help with that if that's something that you're looking to do. Because using the Business Basic or the E1 licenses, whichever you use, you will get Teams completely unlocked for all the people that work in the organization. So that's everything from file sharing through to video calling, recording your calls as well, and your video calls like we've done today, and being able to share that out to the organization. So I don't know the exact differences, I've got to be honest, but generally on the free things, the limitations are the things that cost Microsoft more money to run, i.e. the audio conferencing services. So the video services are usually very limited, along with things like the file sharing. But because you're charities, you guys can get all of that with that donation. So it's much more. It's certainly worth considering going down that route.
Lovely, thanks, Luke.
Brilliant. if anybody's got any questions that they've not managed to that we've not answered, you're very welcome just to either put your hand up now and we'll come to it. I'll try and see if there's anybody with their hand up on the screen, and then you can unmute and ask the question. Oh, Jane, do you want to unmute yourself?
Done it, yeah. What level of training would you imagine a group of, say, 20 people, thinking at Thornbury Animal Sanctuary, not, you know, varying levels of computer literacy, how much do you think they would need in the use of this, roughly?
That's quite a difficult question to answer because it depends on what people are used to using before. So if the people in the organisation are used to using Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, etc., there'll be no training needed for them to continue using those pieces of the software. It depends where you're wanting to get out to. You know, for example, again, a couple of charities I've worked with, and I won't mention any names just because I've not asked their permission to, but very local to us that have introduced email. I think I said it in my presentation for the first time, and they had to do some training on Outlook, which to some people might seem an everyday task, but if you've never used it before, then that requires a bit of training. So it's really difficult to say without understanding where people are at. But what I would say is a lot of the Microsoft have made a lot of strides to make sure that this is user friendly and it's as simple and as modern as possible. And what we find is people don't really have too much of an issue using things like Zoom in the personal world, or Facebook or Twitter, and they're trying to move everything towards that social kind of structure. So everything is very similar, even though it's got a very serious, obviously, element to it. We're not here to chat and share pictures of everybody's cats and dogs, unfortunately, for likes, but we are here to talk about some some real things that get people's lives properly affected through the charities. And
Okay.
but it does vary, but people tend to take to it fairly well because it's becoming a standard thing.
Thank you.
Brilliant. No, that's been absolutely super.